Well, and it flies in the face of some of the, outspoken members of the National Party who come up north and compete directly with the KAP and say, we love coal and we love nuclear. Well, and this is rubbish, this net zero 2050. Well, if it is, you're in the wrong party. Wouldn't make any difference if you join Liberal or Labor. You're going to have exactly the same values, or National Party. I mean, that's sad. The National Party's having takes that position. That's almost the opposite, complete opposite to the National Party I was brought up with.
Early next month, you will be hosting a forum to discuss a possible role for nuclear power in the nation's energy mix.
Yes.
Alongside coal-fired power stations and renewables. Why should we be looking more closely at nuclear power and uranium mining?
Well, yeah, I think it's always you want to go for efficiency should be a big part of the plan, and we'd also KAP would always qualify efficiency and productivity with what's it delivered back to the people, and so it's not just a question of efficiency itself, but it's a very complicated matrix when you line up all the energy. When they say this one's cheaper or this one's easy to deliver. I've had a nuclear energy advocate and an expert from one of the universities going through it, and he didn't just say nuclear is better because of this. He said it was a matrix and saying it takes longer to get up and running. It's more expensive on the front end, but over the long term, it well outperforms all these other forms. So when people just say this is too expensive, that's not too expensive, but it's pretty safe to say in the long run, as a base load, it's hard to beat. It's a highly efficient, very energy dense, unparalleled in the energy density that you can get out of that. And there's a good reason they use it on ships and submarines, those sort of things, because it's so efficient. That's why they do it. And I think it would make a lot of sense for us to move in that direction. But we exist in a political climate now that the KAP is heavily opposed to on this net zero 2050 and this nonsense. And we don't buy into that, but we've still got to live and play in the playground with these people that believe in that madness. So to achieve that, they're racing down the road of these renewables without any decent dispatchable base load in mind, and this can fill that gap. So this is makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways, and I think I think it's inevitable that we'll be marching down the nuclear road. It's just a matter of who gets to take advantage of that.
Sweden has recently announced it will once again allow uranium mining to make way for more nuclear generation, with plans to build 10 large reactors. 5 other European countries have announced plans to build more nuclear reactors. How do you explain why Australian governments, including Queensland, continue to have a ban on uranium mining?
Yeah, it's a good question, because it would appear to be highly irrational, the position successive governments have taken against uranium. As I understand it, I mean, it's all before my time, but there was a lot of protest movement against the French nuclear testing in the Pacific, and there was a lot of negativity associated around it. And I am old enough to remember Chernobyl and then Fukushima, but I don't even know why Fukushima comes in there. I mean, it was a nuclear reactor, but it was a pump problem that they had. The diesel pumps got flooded in a 1 in 1,000-year tidal wave tsunami. And as I understand it, no one died out of that, or no deaths or anything associated with it. So, and that's about as, catastrophic as you can get in this modern age. So, Chernobyl was just a catastrophe of bad engineering and bad management that is on an antiquated system that would never be built again. So they're pretty silly. Well, I don't think they're very valid arguments in the modern game, and the rest of the world's doing it. America, as I understand, it's one of the only major issues where you'll get the ever dividing and ever the ever divisive the ever divisive Democrats and Republicans, it's the only issue they come together on is nuclear, and they both see it, and maybe for different motivations. But Australia just seems to be immature, and you have politicians that won't lead; they just follow public opinion, and the average person has questions about nuclear. They're fed on this stuff growing up that it's terrible, makes bombs, and it's just this irrational bias against it, when really, whether you're agnostic on climate change like I am, and as KAP is, or whether you're pro climate change and believe in this net zero stuff, we both should agree that we should be doing nuclear. And dispatchable baseload at that sort of strength is a terrific idea, and we're really well placed to do it in Australia. We've got some remote locations, like Mount Isa itself. Once we'll be connected to the grid in another few years, and you'll have potential for all sorts of value add refining works with large dispatchable base load out there, and nuclear would just be a fantastic adjunct for that. The hypocrisy knows no bounds on this subject. The Australian government just committed the AUKUS agreement, so we can have nuclear-powered subs coming into port. We've had ships doing it for years, and perhaps we can put a big extension cord out to the ships and the submarine, plug it into our grid, and that's okay. But if you want to put nuclear power plant in a remote area of Australia where it's nice, geologically stable, connected up the grid, that's not okay. And we can mine it. We mine it now in Australia. There's a couple of mines. We've been mining it for years. There's a lot of dirtier minerals you can pull out of the ground, or at least as dirty. And the government's in love with the batteries and all these critical minerals now to make batteries. Well, go and ask someone about mining cobalt or lithium. Ask them what the health effects of that cobalt. As I understand, there's radiation associated, very dirty. It makes dirty bombs. But it doesn't have that same stigma attached to it. We mine cobalt in Australia, and lithium. Lithium, I've been told, a horrible process of getting that out of the ground. But that's clean energy, they call it, and clean metals. And uranium's dirty, and we can't touch it. I live in Mount Isa in the northwest of Queensland, and there's some massive uranium mining deposits right nearby, and some large refinery still there, copper refinery. And we could be building zinc refineries and value adding in that area, but you need large dispatchable base load, and you need more of it to be able to achieve that. And if the National Party want to run down the road with Labor and Liberals on net zero 2050, we need something, and we want to see the coal. We want to see these coal-fired power stations going for many years still, because they're part of the mix. But I think for expansion, there's great opportunities in nuclear. And even if that takes us 10 years, that's a lot better rollout than all these wind farms and solar. To get a secondary form, a B grade type of energy source from those, you're going to take a lot longer, and it's a lot less reliable. So, timeframes are fine, and for any strategic government action. So, it's got a lot going for it, and I think, at the very least, we just need to hear the reasons why the government won't do it, and why you would, if you oppose it, tell us why. You owe the people that, and it's time to have a mature debate about it without, just defaulting back to these antiquated sort of hippie values from the 70s and 80s that just make no sense at all today.
At their convention at the weekend, the National Party reaffirmed its commitment to net zero, which means all the major parties continue to line up on that goal, despite a recent report which says Australia needs to invest $1.3 trillion by 2030 if we are to ever achieve net zero. To put that figure in perspective, that would be 3 times our health spending and 10 times our defence spending over that period.
Yeah.
Anyone would look at that at that equation and say it's just not feasible, yet all the major parties are lining up behind it. So what's going on here?
Well, and it flies in the face of some of the, outspoken members of the National Party who come up north and compete directly with the KAP and say, we love coal and we love nuclear. Well, and this is rubbish, this net zero 2050. Well, if it is, you're in the wrong party. Wouldn't make any difference if you join Liberal or Labor. You're going to have exactly the same values. Or National Party. I mean, that's sad that National Parties haven't takes that position. That's almost the opposite, complete opposite to the National Party I was brought up with. Not surprising though, that they just pander to this irrational sort of urban elitist, and it's not even a well-informed view on nuclear energy and on the net zero 2050 stuff that that we've got to charge down that road. It's ill-informed from our view, but very disappointing that they'd turn their back on their people like that.